Jack Miller watched the alien patrol march down Main Street with their usual mechanical precision. The Vixari moved differently than humans, their long limbs swinging in perfect unison, 3 glowing eyes scanning everything. Even after 18 years of occupation, the sight still made his stomach tighten. "Dad, they're coming this way," Kevin whispered, his small hand gripping Jack's worn jacket. "Eyes down, son," Jack murmured, gently guiding his 8-year-old boy to look at the cracked sidewalk. "Remember what I taught you." They stood motionless as the patrol passed. One of the Vaxari soldiers paused, its breathing apparatus making a clicking sound as it studied them. Jack felt Kevin tremble but was proud when the boy didn't look up. After what seemed like forever, the soldier moved on. "Good job," Jack said, once they were alone again. "Let's get your medicine and go home before curfew." The town that was once called Lakeside, Minnesota, now bore the designation Human Settlement 117. The old pharmacy sign had been replaced with Vaxari symbols and an English translation, Medical Supply Distribution. Inside, Susan Ward was arguing with the alien supervisor. "This isn't enough insulin," Susan said, her voice firm despite her obvious fear. 3 people will die without proper doses." The Vaxari supervisor's translator device emitted a flat voice. "Resource allocation is determined by productivity metrics. Settlement 117's mining output decreased by 12% last cycle." Jack stepped forward. "Dr. Ward, is there a problem?" Susan turned, relief flashing in her eyes when she saw Jack. As the settlement's head doctor, she fought daily battles for basic supplies. "Mr. Miller," she nodded, "just explaining to our friends that sick miners can't meet quotas." The Vaxari supervisor's upper membrane fluttered, a sign of irritation Jack had learned to recognize. "Engineer Miller, your maintenance record is acceptable. Perhaps you should focus on equipment efficiency rather than medical concerns." Jack forced himself to bow slightly. "Of course. The doctor was just helping with my son's asthma medication." The alien studied Kevin, who stood perfectly still. After a moment, it pressed something on its wrist device. "Additional bronchial solution approved. 1 unit. The boy should improve his physical conditioning." "Thank you," Jack said, the words bitter in his mouth. "Your generosity helps us serve the Vaxari better." Once outside with Kevin's medicine secured, they hurried through the failing light. The streets emptied quickly as curfew approached. They passed the town square where the punishment post stood, metal columns where humans were bound for public discipline. Jack instinctively pulled Kevin closer. "Dad," Kevin whispered, "why do they hate us?" Jack considered his words carefully. Sensor drones often hovered overhead, recording conversations. "They don't hate us, son. They just see us differently. Like how we used to treat—" He searched for an example a child would understand. "Like farm animals. Useful but not equal." Kevin frowned, processing this. "But I'm not an animal." "No, you're not," Jack said softly. "Never forget that." They reached their small house just as the curfew siren began its wail. Their home, like all human dwellings now, bore a Vaxari identification code on the door and was subject to random searches. Inside, Jack locked the 3 required bolts and pulled the blackout curtains closed. Kevin took his medicine and then pulled out his secret treasure, a small book of preoccupation photos showing Earth's cities, mountains, and oceans, without Vaxari architecture dominating the skylines. "Can I go to Billy's house tomorrow?" Kevin asked, flipping through the forbidden pages. His dad found an old video game. "Maybe, if your chores are done and there's no extra work shift." Jack began preparing their dinner, a bland protein paste supplemented with vegetables from their small garden. The Vaxari allowed gardens as they improved human health with minimal resource cost. A soft knock at the back door made them both freeze. Jack motioned for Kevin to hide the book and went to check the security peephole. He relaxed slightly when he saw Amanda Porter's face and opened the door quickly. "You shouldn't be out after curfew," he said as she slipped inside. Amanda's face was tense. At 35, she looked much older, her hair already gray. Few knew she led the local resistance cell. "I had to come. There's news." Jack glanced at Kevin. "Son, Go to your room for a bit. But Dad, now please. When Kevin had gone, Amanda spoke in a near whisper. Eric Collins was questioned today. 3 hours with the mind probes. Jack felt cold. Eric was the town supervisor, the official human liaison with the Vixari. Did he break? I don't think so, but he looked terrible afterward. They're getting suspicious about the missing electronics. Jack had been quietly collecting components for months, smuggling tiny pieces from the mining facility where he maintained equipment. I'll slow down. We can't risk everything yet. Amanda shook her head. Actually, we need to speed up. Word from Settlement 89 is they've successfully jammed Vaxari communications. It only worked for 3 minutes, but it's a start. Hope flared in Jack's chest before caution tamped it down. How reliable is this information? Very. And there's more. Amanda leaned closer. A new commander is coming, someone called Dravnek. Apparently, he specializes in crushing dissent. Jack's mouth went dry. When? 2 days. They're already preparing the administration building. A small noise made them both turn. Kevin stood in the hallway. Kevin, I told you. There was a drone, Kevin said. Outside my window, looking in. Jack and Amanda exchanged alarmed glances. Jack rushed to Kevin's room and checked the window. Nothing visible now, but that meant nothing. How long was it there? Did it make any recording sounds? Kevin shook his head. It just hovered for a minute, then flew away when I saw it. Amanda was already heading for the door. I should go. Be careful, Jack. Watch what you say for the next few days. After she left, Jack sat with Kevin until bedtime, telling him sanitized stories about life before the Vaxari came. As he tucked his son in, Kevin asked the question he often did. Dad, will they ever leave? Usually, Jack gave a non-committal answer. Tonight, something made him speak differently. Someday, Kevin. And maybe sooner than they think. The next morning, Jack walked Kevin to the education center where human children learned Vaxari language and basic skills. As they approached, Jack noticed something unusual. A Vaxari youth standing apart from the other aliens watching the human children arrive. That one's different, Kevin whispered. He doesn't have the soldier markings. Must be an administrator's child, Jack said. Remember, eyes down, speak only when spoken to, Kevin recited. I know, Dad. Jack watched his son walk into the building, a weight in his chest. Every day he sent Kevin into danger, and every night he thanked whatever gods might exist when his boy came home safe. What he didn't see was Kevin glancing back at the young Vaxari, or the slight nod exchanged between them, the beginning of a secret that would change everything. Kevin waited 3 days before he dared to meet the young Vaxari again. He found a gap in the fence behind the education center where the alien sensors had failed. The small clearing in the woods had become his secret place, somewhere to escape, the constant watching. I thought you would not return, said a voice behind him. Kevin jumped and turned to see the Vaxari youth. Up close, he looked different from the adult soldiers. His skin was lighter, almost blue instead of gray, and his 3 eyes seemed larger, more curious. You speak our language, Kevin said, surprised by how normal the voice sounded without the usual mechanical translation. I learn it properly, not like the adults who use machines. The young alien stepped closer. My name is Zextal. Kevin hesitated. His father had warned him never to give his name to any Vaxari, but something about Zextal felt different. I'm Kevin. Zextal's upper eye blinked. Why do you come here alone, Kevin? It is not permitted. Why did you follow me if it's not permitted? The alien made a sound that might have been a laugh. Because I am also curious about forbidden things. That was the beginning. Over the next few weeks, Kevin would slip away whenever possible to meet Zextal. The young Vaxari taught him words in their language and told him about their home world, a place with 3 moons and endless oceans. In return, Kevin showed him human games and told him stories from before the occupation. Meanwhile, Jack noticed the change in his son. Kevin seemed happier, more energetic. He assumed the boy had found friends his own age, something rare and precious in these times. At the mining facility, Jack worked carefully. With Commander Dravnek now overseeing the settlement, security had doubled. The new commander had already made his presence felt. 3 humans had been publicly punished for minor infractions, beaten until they couldn't stand. "You need to be more careful," Susan whispered, as she treated Jack's hands in the small medical facility. He had deliberately injured himself to get away from the watchful eyes at work. "The Resistance needs these parts," Jack replied quietly. "Amanda says we're close to building something that could actually hurt them." Susan looked around nervously before reaching into her coat. She pulled out a small vial with bluish liquid. "I found something. When I was treating a wounded Vaxari soldier, I noticed their nervous system reacts strongly to certain frequencies. This is a chemical compound that creates that frequency when it breaks down." Jack stared at her. "You mean it's a weapon?" "Potentially, but I need more time to study it, make sure it won't harm humans too." They fell silent as a Vaxari medical supervisor walked past. When Jack left, he had the vial hidden in his boot and new hope in his heart. That evening, Amanda visited again. Her news was not good. "They're planning something big," she said. Eric overheard Dravnek talking to his lieutenants. "Something called Project Harvest." "What is it?" "We don't know exactly, but they're bringing in more transport ships next month. Big ones." Jack thought of Susan's discovery. "We may have something to fight back with, but we need time. Time is the one thing we don't have," Amanda said grimly. Neither of them noticed Kevin listening from the hallway again. This time, he heard everything. The next day, Kevin met Zexatal with urgent questions. "What is Project Harvest?" he asked without preamble. Zexatal's eyes widened in alarm. "Where did you hear this name? It is dangerous to speak of it." "Please," Kevin begged. "They're going to hurt more people, aren't they?" The young Vaxari seemed to struggle internally before speaking. "Project Harvest is Odd's collection, taking humans to central processing. Many humans. For what? Some for labor on other worlds, some for study, some—" Zextal couldn't finish. Kevin felt sick. "You have to help us stop it." "I cannot oppose the collective," Zextal said, but his voice wavered. "Then why do you meet me? Why learn our language or tell me about your world?" Kevin pressed. "You know it's wrong what they're doing to us." Before Zextal could answer, they heard voices. Vaxari soldiers patrolling nearby. Kevin started to run, but Zextal grabbed his arm. "Not that way, they have motion sensors." He pulled Kevin in another direction, helping him escape. That night, Jack found Kevin unusually quiet. "Everything okay, son?" he asked. Kevin nodded, not meeting his eyes. "Dad, what would happen if someone helped the Vaxari? Would they be bad?" Jack knelt down to look his son in the eyes. "It depends on why they did it. Sometimes good people do things that seem wrong because they're scared or because they're trying to protect someone they love." Kevin seemed to consider this deeply. What if a Vaxari helped humans? Jack stiffened, alarm bells ringing in his mind. "Kevin, has someone been asking you questions? Has a Vaxari talked to you?" "No," Kevin said too quickly. "I was just wondering." Jack didn't believe him, but before he could press further, the warning sirens began to wail. Not the curfew siren, this was different. The emergency gathering signal. "Stay here," Jack ordered, locking the door as he left. In the town square, humans gathered fearfully as Vaxari soldiers formed a perimeter. Commander Dravnek stood on a raised platform, his imposing figure nearly 7 feet tall. Beside him stood Eric Collins, the town supervisor, his face bruised and swollen. "Residents of Settlement 117, Dravnek's translator boomed. "Your supervisor has been found guilty of sedition. He has betrayed both his people and the Vaxari collective by stealing restricted information." Jack searched the crowd and found Amanda. Her face was ashen. "The penalty is death," Dravnek continued. "Let this serve as instruction on the cost of defiance." With horrible efficiency, the commander placed a device against Eric's head. The man's body convulsed once, then collapsed, A collective gasp rose from the crowd. Additionally, Dravnek said, effective immediately, all human juveniles will undergo loyalty screening. Any showing signs of contamination will be removed for re-education. Jack's blood turned to ice. He pushed through the crowd, running back toward his house. When he arrived, the door was open. Inside, 2 Vaxari soldiers stood with Kevin between them. "What are you doing?" Jack demanded, forgetting caution in his panic. "This juvenile was identified by surveillance as having unauthorized contact with a Vaxari youth," one soldier said. "He will be taken for questioning." "No." Jack lunged forward but was immediately restrained by a third soldier who had been waiting. From outside came a commotion. A Vaxari civilian rushed in, an administrator Jack recognized from the mining facility. Behind him was a young Vaxari who could only be Zextal. "Father, stop this," Zextal cried in perfect English. "Kevin is my friend. I initiated the contact." The administrator looked shocked. "Zextal, you have broken our most sacred protocols. Return home immediately." "I will not let them hurt him," Zextal insisted. Commander Dravnek himself appeared in the doorway, his massive frame filling the space. He surveyed the scene with cold calculation. "So this is the human child who corrupts our youth," he said. "Bring them both to the square. This requires a more public resolution." As they dragged Kevin away, his eyes met Jack's. For the first time since he was a baby, Jack saw real fear in his son's face. "Dad!" Kevin called out. "I'll find you," Jack shouted back as the soldiers knocked him to the ground. "I promise." But as the door closed, Jack knew with terrible certainty that some promises couldn't be kept. The town square had never been so crowded. Every human in Settlement 117 was forced to attend. Jack stood in the front row, held in place by 2 Vaxari guards. His eyes never left Kevin, who stood small and terrified on the platform next to Commander. Dravnek Zextal was there too, restrained by his own people, his father watching with a mixture of shame and anger. "Today we address 2 violations," Dravnek announced, his translator making his voice echo across the square. "A human child who sought to corrupt a Vaxari youth, and a Vaxari who forgot the natural order." "He's just a child," Susan Ward shouted, from somewhere in the crowd. Dravnek turned his 3 eyes toward her voice. "Age is irrelevant. The contamination begins early in humans. It must be purged early as well." Jack struggled against his captors. "Please, take me instead. I'm his father. I'm responsible." "Yes, you are responsible," Dravnek agreed, "and so you will watch. This is the consequence of your failure to teach proper submission." Zextal broke free from his guard and rushed to stand between Kevin and the commander. "This is wrong. The elders teach respect for all sentient life. What you do here violates our most sacred." A quick movement from Dravnek silenced him. The young Vaxari dropped to the platform, stunned by some device in the commander's hand. "Remove him," Dravnek ordered. "He will undergo purification treatment." As they dragged Zextal away, Kevin found his courage. "He's right. You're the ones who are wrong. Humans aren't animals." The crowd gasped. No child had ever dared speak to a Vaxari commander this way. Dravnek studied Kevin with something almost like curiosity. "Interesting. Your species shows defiance even when it clearly leads to your destruction. This is why you must be controlled." He turned to address the crowd again. "Let this serve as the final lesson. After today, there will be no more warnings." Jack saw the device in Dravnek's hand move toward Kevin. "No!" he screamed, breaking, free with strength born of desperation. He made it 3 steps before the guards caught him again, forcing him to his knees. Susan pushed through the crowd. "He needs medical attention. At least let me—" A Vaxari soldier struck her across the face, sending her sprawling. Kevin looked at his father one last time. His face showed fear, but also something else, a fierce pride that he had stood up, that he had not been broken. "Dad," he said, just loud enough for Jack to hear. "It's okay." The device touched Kevin's temple. There was no sound, no visible wound. The boy simply collapsed, his small body crumpling to the platform floor. A terrible silence fell over the square. Even the Vaxari soldiers seemed stunned by the execution of a child. Dravnek's voice cut through the silence. Disposal team, remove the body. All humans return to your dwellings for mandatory reflection period. Further gatherings are prohibited. The guards released Jack, who crawled forward and pulled Kevin's lifeless body into his arms before anyone could stop him. No one moved to intervene as he cradled his son, rocking back and forth in silent agony. Susan recovered and came to kneel beside him. Her hands moved automatically to check for signs of life, though she knew there would be none. Tears streamed down her face as she gently closed Kevin's eyes. "Jack," she whispered, "we need to take him home." Jack didn't seem to hear her. He just held his son tighter. The Vaxari began forcing the other humans away, clearing the square. Amanda appeared at Jack's side. "Let us help you," she said softly. "Please." Together, she and Susan helped Jack to his feet. He carried Kevin's body himself, refusing to let anyone else touch him. The Vaxari guards watched, but did not interfere as the small procession left the square. Word spread quickly through the settlement. By evening, despite the prohibition against gatherings, humans were arriving at Jack's house one by one, bringing food, candles, small tokens of remembrance. The Vaxari patrols increased, but did not stop the silent visitors. Jack sat beside his son's body, which Susan had carefully prepared and wrapped in the cleanest blanket they could find. He hadn't spoken a word since the square. Amanda organized the visitors, keeping watch for patrols, sending people home before curfew. When the house was finally empty except for her and Susan, she approached Jack. "We're going to fight back," she said. "Not just our cell, every settlement. Word of what happened today is spreading already." Jack looked up, his eyes hollow. "How?" "They have everything. Weapons, ships, technology we can't match." Susan sat across from him. "Maybe not, Jack. Remember what I showed you? The compound that affects their nervous system?" She pulled out more vials of the blue liquid. "I've been testing it. It works as a sonic disruptor when properly activated." For the first time, a spark of something showed in Jack's empty eyes. "Show me." 3 days later, they buried Kevin in a small ceremony attended by the entire community. No one spoke for fear of surveillance, but every person present placed a hand on Jack's shoulder as they passed by the grave. That night, Jack sat alone, in Kevin's room, holding his son's Book of Earth photographs. A soft knock at the window startled him. He pulled back the curtain to find Zextal hovering outside, using some kind of personal flight device. Jack's first instinct was rage. He wanted to blame this alien youth for his son's death. But something in Zextal's eyes, all three of them filled with what could only be described as grief, stopped him. He opened the window. "You shouldn't be here, they'll kill you too." "I escaped purification," Zextal said, his voice hoarse. "I came to tell you I am sorry, and to give you this." He handed Jack a small data crystal. It contains security codes, patrol schedules, and blueprints of the command center. Jack stared at the crystal. "Why would you help us now?" "Because Kevin was right," Zextal said simply. "What my people are doing is wrong, and because he was my friend." He looked past Jack to the empty room. "The only real friend I ever had." Jack pocketed the crystal. "They'll be looking for you. Yes, I cannot go home again." Zextal began to pull away from the window. "There are others like me who question what we have become. Not many, but some. We will help when the time comes." "What time?" "When you fight back," Zextal said. "Kevin believed humans would never stay slaves forever. I believe it too." After the young Vaxari disappeared into the night, Jack sat looking at the crystal in his hand. Then he went to his workbench and pulled out the components he'd been collecting, along with Susan's vials of blue liquid. By morning, he had built the first prototype of what would later be called a grief singer, a small device that emitted the specific frequency that disrupted Vaxari neural pathways. As the sun rose, Jack Miller looked at his creation and thought of his son's brave final words. It was time to show the Vaxari that humans did not rule by fear alone. They ruled by love too, and the loss of it could ignite fires that would burn across worlds. 1 month after Kevin's death, Settlement 117 had changed. The humans moved differently now, with purpose hidden beneath their show of submission. Underground, in basements and abandoned tunnels, they prepared. Jack had not returned to work at the mining facility. The Vaxari marked him as unstable after his son's death and left him alone, a mistake they would soon regret. In the hidden workshop beneath his house, Jack worked day and night building more grief singers, each one smaller and more powerful than the last. "We have 12 now," Amanda said, inspecting the latest device. 20 resistance members crowded into the secret room, their faces lit by dim emergency lights. "The question is how to use them." Susan stepped forward. She'd become harder in the past month, her doctor's compassion now tempered with cold determination. "We've made contact with 6 other settlements. They're all waiting for our signal." Jack pointed to a crude map spread on the table. "According to Zextal's information, the command center controls all Vaxari communications within 500 miles. If we take it out, their forces will be isolated, unable to coordinate. But the center is heavily guarded," someone pointed out. "We'd never get close enough." Jack smiled for the first time since Kevin's death. It was not a pleasant smile. "We don't need to get close. They'll bring us in themselves." The plan was simple but dangerous. 20 volunteers would allow themselves to be arrested for minor infractions. The Vaxari would take them to the command center for processing, standard procedure under Dravnek's new strict rules. Each volunteer would carry a small grief singer hidden in their clothing, designed to pass through the Vaxari scanners. Once inside, Jack explained, we activate them simultaneously. The effect should incapacitate every Vaxari in the building. "What about the human collaborators?" someone asked. Jack's eyes hardened. They made their choice. The next day, the arrests began. One by one, resistance members committed calculated violations, missing work shifts, being found outside permitted, zones possessing forbidden items. By evening, 17 had been taken away. Jack was among the last to be arrested. He stood at his son's grave waiting for the patrol he knew would come. When the Vaxari soldiers arrived, he didn't resist. "Jack Miller," the lead soldier said, "you are in violation of morning time restrictions." Jack held out his hands for the restraints. "I know." At the command center, the prisoners were held in separate cells. Through the walls, Jack could hear others being questioned. He checked the small device hidden beneath a false bandage on his arm. 3 hours until the synchronized activation. The door to his cell opened. Commander Dravnek himself entered, studying Jack with his 3 unblinking eyes. "Engineer Miller," he said, "your behavior has been noted as unusual. Yet your skills are valuable. The collective offers you rehabilitation and return to productive service." Jack looked up slowly. "Why did you kill my son?" Dravnek seemed genuinely puzzled by the question. The juvenile was corrupted beyond correction. It was efficient to terminate. "He had a name," Jack said quietly. "Kevin, he was 8 years old. Names are irrelevant. Age is irrelevant. Function and compliance are what matter." The commander moved closer. "Your continued emotional attachment to a terminated unit is irrational." Jack felt the rage building inside him, but kept his face blank. "What will happen to me now?" "You will undergo memory adjustment. The connection to the terminated juvenile will be removed. You will work efficiently again." Dravnek almost sounded like he was offering a gift. "When does this adjustment happen?" "Processing begins in 4 hours. Rest until then." The commander left, the cell door sliding shut behind him. Jack checked his device again. 2 hours and 45 minutes too long. They needed to move faster. In another part of the building, Susan was also being questioned. Her interrogator was not Dravnek, but a lower-ranking officer. "Your medical knowledge is useful," the Vaxari told her. "Cooperate now, and you will be assigned to the central medical facility instead of punishment. Susan coughed violently, doubling over. When the guard moved closer to check on her, she pressed the activation button on her grief singer, triggering it ahead of schedule. The effect was immediate. The Vaxari collapsed, his nervous system overwhelmed by the targeted frequency. Susan grabbed his access card and slipped out of the room. Moving quickly through the corridors, she freed 3 other resistance members before an alarm sounded. They had lost the element of surprise, but there was no turning back now. "Activate your devices," Susan shouted as they ran through the building. "Do it now!" Throughout the command center, hidden grief singers came to life. The effect was more powerful than they had expected. Vaxari soldiers fell where they stood, some convulsing, others simply collapsing. Human collaborators looked around in confusion as their masters suddenly failed. Jack heard the commotion and activated his own device. When his cell door opened, it was Amanda who stood there, holding a Vaxari weapon. "Change of plans," she said breathlessly. "We're taking the command center. Now." They fought their way through the building, gathering more freed prisoners as they went. Most of the Vaxari were incapacitated, but some in distant sections of the building were still functioning. Gunfire echoed through metal corridors. In the Yao central command room, they found Dravnek still standing despite the sonic assault. The commander had some kind of protective device that partially shielded him from the grief singer's effect. "Primitive weapons," he snarled, his translator making the words sound distorted. "This changes nothing. The collective is vast. You are nothing." Jack stepped forward, facing the alien who had killed his son. "You're wrong. We're not nothing. We're human." He pulled out one final device, larger than the others, powered by components Susan had taken from the medical facility. This grief singer was different, designed not to incapacitate but to kill. Dravnek realized the danger too late. He lunged for Jack, but Amanda fired the Vaxari weapon, hitting the commander in the leg. He stumbled, giving Jack the moment he needed. The enhanced grief singer activated with a high-pitched whine. Dravnek's 3 eyes widened, then burst in a spray of fluid. The commander crashed to the floor, his body twisting unnaturally before going still. Jack stood over his enemy's body, feeling nothing but emptiness where he had expected satisfaction. "We need to move quickly," Amanda said, breaking his trance. "Secure the communications array." Within an hour, they had control of the entire command center. Susan worked on the Vaxari systems, using information from Zextal's data crystal to access the communication network. "I'm in," she announced. "We can broadcast to all settlements in the region." Jack took the microphone. His voice, when he spoke, was steady and clear. "People of Earth. My name is Jack Miller. Today humans have taken control of a Vaxari command center. My son Kevin was executed 1 month ago for befriending a young Vaxari. He believed our species could be more than slaves. He was right." He paused, looking around at the humans who now stood tall, no longer cowering. "This is not just a rebellion. This is a war. And for the first time, we have weapons that work. Spread the word. Build the devices. The time has come to take back our world." As he finished speaking, reports began coming in from other settlements. The uprising had already begun to spread like wildfire. 6 months after the takeover of the command center, the war had spread across the planet. What began as a small uprising in Settlement 117 had grown into a global rebellion. The humans called it Kevin's War, after the child whose death had lit the flame. Jack stood at the window of what had once been Dravnek's office, looking out over the landscape. The Vaxari structures were slowly being dismantled, replaced by human buildings. He had a new scar across his face and walked with a slight limp, battle wounds from a dozen skirmishes. Susan entered, carrying a tablet with the latest reports. She had become his right hand, her medical knowledge proving invaluable as they refined the grief singer technology. "The European settlements are all free," she said. "Asia is still fighting, but they've taken control of 3 major Vaxari bases." Jack nodded. "And the ships?" 2 more landed yesterday, but they're not attack vessels." Susan placed the tablet on the desk. "Jack, they're diplomatic ships. They're asking to talk." This was unexpected. For months, the Vaxari had been sending military reinforcements, only to find humans ready with grief singers and other weapons developed from captured technology. Each battle had been costly for both sides, but humans had the advantage of fighting for their home. Where are they now? Jack asked. In orbit. They're requesting permission to send down 3 unarmed representatives. Jack considered this. It could be a trap, but the Vaxari had never shown interest in negotiation before. Tell Amanda to prepare a secure meeting room. Heavy security, full scans, and grief singers on standby. Hours later, Jack sat across from 3 Vaxari unlike any he had seen before. They were older, their skin more deeply textured, and they wore simple robes instead of the military gear he was accustomed to. "We are the Elder Council," the center one said, speaking English without a translator. "We have come to end this conflict." Jack's face remained impassive. "Your kind killed my son, and millions of others. What makes you think we're interested in talking?" The elder on the left spoke. "The one called Dravnek was not following our true directives. The Earth occupation was meant to be temporary, a protective measure." "Protective?" Jack laughed bitterly. "You have an interesting definition of protection." "There is much you do not know," the third elder said. "May we show you?" They placed a device on the table. It projected a 3-dimensional image of space, showing Earth and then zooming out to reveal thousands of stars. 20 Earth years ago, our long-range sensors detected a threat approaching your solar system. A species we call the harvesters. They consume all life on planets they visit, leaving nothing behind. The projection showed dark ships, unlike the Vaxari vessels moving between stars. Planets that had once glowed with life went dark as they passed. "We came to prepare your world to fight them, to advance your technology quickly enough to survive. But the military council, led by commanders like Dravnek, perverted our mission. They saw opportunity for conquest instead of alliance." Jack studied the images, unsure what to believe. "Convenient story. Why should we trust you?" The center elder placed something else on the table, a small toy. Jack recognized it immediately. It was the gift Zextal had given Kevin before his death. "Because not all Vaxari are the same," the elder said. "Zextal is my grandchild. He has told us everything, about your son, about what Dravnek did, about the true spirit of humans." Jack picked up the toy, his fingers tracing its familiar shape. "Where is Zextal now?" "Leading others who think as he does. Young Vaxari who question the old ways. They have formed a resistance of their own, fighting against the military council." Susan, who had been silently observing, spoke up. "The harvesters. How close are they?" 3 years from your system. Less, perhaps. Time grows short." Jack set the toy down carefully. "So you want us to stop fighting you so we can fight them instead?" "No," the elder said. "We want to fight alongside you. As equals, the way it should have been from the beginning." The meeting lasted for hours. When it was over, Jack walked alone to the small cemetery where Kevin was buried. The grave was well tended, with fresh flowers placed by people who had never even known his son, but understood what his death had meant. "I'm not sure what to do." "Kevin," Jack said softly to the grave, "they say they want peace now, that there's a bigger threat coming." He sighed. "I don't know if I can trust them, but I don't know if we can win this bigger war without them either." He felt someone approach and turned to see Amanda. "The council is waiting for your decision," she said. "The other settlement leaders have agreed to follow whatever you choose." Jack shook his head. "I shouldn't be the one to decide this. I'm too close to it." "That's exactly why it should be you," Amanda replied. "You lost the most. If you can find a way to work with them, anyone can." Jack looked back at the grave. What would he have wanted? "He was friends with one of them," Amanda said gently. "I think he saw something in them that the rest of us missed." Jack stood silent for a long moment. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out the toy the elder had returned to him. He placed it on Kevin's grave. "Set up a joint command," he finally said. Tell them we'll consider an alliance, but on our terms. Equal say in all decisions. Full disclosure of all technology. And Zextal is to be our direct liaison. Amanda nodded. And Dravnik's supporters. Justice, not vengeance, Jack said firmly. We try them for their crimes, but we don't become like them. As they walked back toward the command center, Jack saw a group of children playing in what had once been the town square. They ran freely, laughing, no longer afraid of the sky or the shadows. One of them waved to him, and he waved back. 6 months ago, he had been a broken man with nothing left to lose. Now he was helping to build something new, a world where his son's death had meaning, a world where humans and Vaxari might someday stand together against a common enemy. That night, Jack sat at his desk writing in a journal, something he had started doing to preserve Kevin's memory. He wrote about the meeting with the elders, about the coming threat, about his doubts and hopes. On the final page, he wrote words not for himself, but for the future. They ruled us by fear for 20 years. They thought it made them strong. But they never understood what truly makes humans dangerous. Not our weapons, not our numbers, not even our will to survive. What makes us dangerous is our capacity to love so deeply that when that love is taken from us, the fire it creates can burn across the stars. Kevin, my son, wherever you are now, that fire you started is still burning. And it's lighting our way home. He closed the journal and looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, a new threat was coming. But this time, Earth would not face it alone. This time, they would be ready.